Now with Christie, former governor of New Jersey, now an ABC News contributor, and Democratic Congressman Patrick Maloney. He served as staff secretary in the Clinton White House. And Congressman, let me begin with you. You held the job that Rob Porter held. You just heard Kellyanne Conway say there that they were basically following the regular process.
Right. Look, I did that job. When I did that job, the FBI sent agents from the Montevideo field office in Uruguay to the small Peruvian village where I worked with the Jesuits between college and law school. That process is incredibly exacting. And these guys knew in the first month of the administration about a fact pattern that would have permanently disqualified him from doing the job. He never should have been in the chair. On that desk, there are a stack of red folders marked top secret. Every day, our nation's highest secrets are seen by the staff secretary. There's a burn bag under the desk because when you're done, you incinerate those materials. The idea that someone without a security clearance was allowed to be there in the first place, despite these allegations, and was allowed to stay there with no plan for getting him a clearance is not the normal process.
When the FBI brings this to Don McGahn, the White House counsel, what's supposed to happen?
What's supposed to happen is they're supposed to say, we got a problem with this guy, DQ him, sideline him. Let's find out what the facts are, because you don't want him in the chair reading material that is so sensitive that only the president can see it in some cases, and the staff secretary. People don't understand that the national security advisor doesn't give a memo to the president. He gives it to the staff secretary, who gives it to the president. That means the staff secretary literally sees everything. You know this. And therefore, you cannot have someone seeing our nation's secret who has a secret of their own. They are so easy to blackmail. That's why you do a background
Governor
check.
Christie, how do you explain this? Don McGahn clearly knew about this several months ago. Credible reports that John Kelly did as well. Where's the breakdown here?
Well, the breakdown's obviously in the process. I went through this, George, when I was U.S. attorney. Every assistant United States attorney has to go through the same type of background check that you're talking about. And the fact is, when there is a problem that comes up, they don't give you like progress reports. But when there is an issue, ultimately, it comes to the employing agency to make this decision.
Right. It's not the FBI's decision. It's the employing agency's
No, it is not the FBI's decision. The FBI is a collector of facts and information that they then present. In our case, it was to the Department of Justice. And then you, as U.S. attorney, spoke with the people at the Department of Justice and say, here are the facts. Are we comfortable with providing clearance to this person or not? Are there standards, and there were certain standards in the Bush Justice Department on drug use and other things that would automatically disqualify someone? So ultimately, this is the decision of the White House. And so depending upon when it was presented, whether it was presented to Chief of Staff Priebus or whether it was presented ultimately first time to Chief of Staff Kelly, along with the White House counsel, they're the decision-making parties here that present that information to the president. So clearly there's a breakdown in process. Now, he's out of the job now, and that's the appropriate thing.
Became public.
Listen, what I'm saying, though, is that I'm not justifying the breakdown in the process, George. What I'm saying is that that's ultimately where it had to have landed. And it should have landed there sooner if, in fact, people had been focusing on it, paying attention to it.
So should someone else pay the price for this?
That's going to be up to the president, ultimately, about whether or not he views this as such a failure of competence in terms of the management that he needs to bring someone else in.
Well, look, from what I understand, John Kelly's story now is that he did something within the first 40 minutes after the first 14 months of ignoring it. That's not acceptable. The fact is, there's no way he didn't know about this. He's up to his neck in it, and he chose not to deal with it. And that is not competent. We brought this guy in, a lot of us thought, to put some order in the White House. We thought Kelly was the guy who could manage the place. But if you're going to clean up aisle 8, you can't be throwing around jars of tomato sauce. I mean, you cannot make a bigger mess than you're cleaning up. And to have a guy in the staff secretary's job, I mean, seeing all of our nation's secrets. And by the way, can I just back up? You've also ignored 2 women who said the guy beat me. I mean, there's a right and a wrong to this as well. What does it say about the value system that they want that guy so much that they're willing to ignore those credible allegations and then give him a security clearance that he'll never be able to earn?
What's the answer to that?
I don't think there is a good answer to that. I mean, the fact, George, is that the reason I look at these allegations and view them as credible is because they were done contemporaneously. As a prosecutor, you're always trying to examine evidence, right, and the credibility of evidence. And one of the ways we examine that is, were these allegations made contemporaneously, or were they made sometime, a long time afterwards, which you'd say, well, why is there a gap? Here, with both of Mr. Porter's ex-wives, they did what we instruct women to do, which is to go to the police One of them obtained a restraining order to document the abuse. One of them had a photograph taken, and to be able to put those things in line and to get out of the situation.
Not a word about that from the president.
Well, listen, the point from my perspective, George, is I look at this and I can't help but do it, not as a former governor, but as a prosecutor. And when you see credible allegations like that, you have to take them seriously. Should there be due process for Rob Porter in terms of any legal action? Of course. Everyone's entitled to that. But as an employer, you've got to look at this and say, are these allegations credible? And if they are, then we've got to take action.
Right. There's no due process when you're talking about whether someone gets a senior level West Wing job with the highest national security clearance you can have. It's a privilege. And my butt would have been kicked down the stairs within 5 minutes of learning something about this, and it would have been the right thing to do. So they had to make a value judgment on this. And by the way, what's the plan? The guy's never going to get a national security clearance, and yet every day he's reading our nation's top secrets and could have been blackmailed.
One thing, George, all I will say about, I think there is some requirement for due process. And that's why the employing agency has to make judgments on the facts that are brought in. I don't think it's enough to say that any allegation should dismiss it.
We're talking about a year.
Well, listen, in this instance, I've already said my opinion on that, okay? But what I'm saying is I think for the congressman to say there's no right to due process here, there is.
No, Governor.
There's a right to due process for the employing agency to make an absolute evaluation of the credibility of the allegations. I'm saying to you, from my perspective, that given the contemporaneous nature and the documentation of these allegations, they were credible enough for people to say,
does John Kelly have to
stop.
But if I may, you just wouldn't put the guy in the job while you gave him that process.
Well, you know everybody goes to the job first, right? I mean, on January 20th, people can't have all their clearances.
Everybody gets the
Everybody gets
that's right, and that's normal. But in this case, they learned in January of 2017 of these allegations, which means that normally you don't have that in front of you when you give an initial clearance. You knew the guy was never going to get cleared, and therefore it seems to me the appropriate thing would have been to say, look, you get your day in court, we're going to do some process, but you're going to sit on the sidelines while we figure it out.
We're out of time. Does John Kelly have to go?
I think the president's got to make that call. I think in the end, we've got to hear from John Kelly as to what he knew. And we haven't heard that directly from him yet. And I think the president needs to hear that before he can make an evaluation of competence. In the end, George, this is about competence. And you have to, as the chief of staff, be able to competently run the place. If there's allegations against that, the president's going to have to make that call.
Thank you both very much. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.